When we use the term architect or designer, what we usually mean is a professional. And we've always assumed that it's those professionals who are going to be the ones who help us solve problems like climate change, social inequality, and urbanization. And then in 2008, just before I graduated as an architecture student, this happened. And this is design's economic paradox, which is that as a society, we've never needed design thinking more, but architecture is unemployed. So we need to go back to the economics. As a fresh architecture graduate, I expect to earn about £24,000. Now, if you put that in terms of the entire world's population, that already puts me in the top 1.95%. And I can't afford to hire myself. So who exactly is it architecture is working for? The truth is that what most people call architecture today is actually the business of working for about 1% of the world's population. And it always has been. And those times in history when architecture has been commissioned by the 1% on behalf of the other 99%, whether that be through philanthropy in the 19th century, communism, the welfare state, or most recently, the inflated real estate market, all have failed. And we're back to square one. The challenge facing my generation of architects is how to make our client, for the first time, not just the 1%, but the 100%. And I want to offer 3 ideas for how we might do it. The first idea is that actually we need to get rid of this idea that architecture is only about making buildings. Actually, a building is a bloody expensive solution to any given problem. And design fundamentally is about solving problems. So here's a true story. A school go to an architect, and they say, look, our corridors are an absolute nightmare. Between lessons, they get entirely congested, we can't control them, nothing we can do. We're going to have to remodel our building, and it's going to cost millions of pounds. And our team went away, and they thought about it, and they said, don't do that. Actually, get rid of the school bell. And replace it, instead of one single school bell, have a series of smaller school bells that go off in different places at different times, distribute the traffic through all your corridors. Solves the same problem, but instead of spending a few £1,000,000, you spend a few £100. The second idea is that we need to get rid of this 20th century idea that architecture is about big buildings and big finance. Actually, 1,000 people with £1 is just as good as one person with £1,000. And we actually need to restructure the way that we sell design services, the way that we lend, and also the way that fundamentally we plan cities to take this recognition on board. And finally, let's remember that actually design economically is like sex. Mostly it's done by amateurs. We tend to forget that. Incidentally, childcare is the same. Most of the work is done outside of the market economy, and that's a good thing. So the challenge that we face is how are we going to build the tools and the infrastructure for architecture's social economy? Historically, what we've done so far is open source software. And more what's happening is that that means also open source hardware. Open sourcing the ability to manufacture and fabricate things. So we have 3D printers that can be made on a 3D printer, or devices such as this, which is a CNC machine that can be cut using another CNC machine. We're moving into a future where the factory is everywhere. And that means that the design team is everyone. And we were absolutely fascinated by what this might mean for architecture. So last year, we began to work on a project called WikiHouse. WikiHouse is an open source construction set, and its aim is to make it possible for anybody to go online, download models which are freely and openly shared, and pretty much at the click of a switch, generate a bunch of cutting files which can be fed into a CNC machine to print out the parts for a house, which they can then build without formal construction skills or power tools, and they can do it in about a day. And we've built a few prototypes of these, and it's really exciting, every time incredibly sociable. And what's really exciting is that now teams of people around the world have begun to pick up on it, and they've begun to take it and tinker it and improve the system. But really, WikiHouse is just a very early experiment. But actually, I think that in there is perhaps the ghost of an industrial revolution. If the 20th century, if design's great project in the 20th century was actually the democratization of consumption, that was Henry Ford, Coca-Cola, Levittown, IKEA, I believe design's great project in the 21st century is the democratization of production. And nowhere is that more important than the way we make architecture and cities. Thanks very much.